Hello, everyone. Welcome to Forge and Anvil, where we hammer out hard conversations to sharpen ourselves for the cultural, political, and spiritual war that we are living in. My name is Connor. I am host of this podcast. I am a husband, a father, and a follower of Christ Jesus, just doing my best to represent him well wherever I go. Today, we are going to be talking all about illegal immigration. Specifically, we're going to be talking about what the state of Tennessee is doing to try to combat illegal immigration. We are at the beginning of a legislative session. There are a bunch of bills that are being proposed, some of which have already been made public, some of which we just have to wait and see what's going to happen. But I really care deeply about this issue. Not too long ago, we had an individual in Putnam County was actually killed by a illegal who was driving. I believe he was driving a semi truck. But either way, every state is a border state now. Unfortunately, the way that immigration has panned out the last several years, especially after the Joe Biden administration let in, one of my guests can tell you a little bit more about these figures, but on the low end, probably about 8 million illegal immigrants. So that being said, I care deeply about this issue. It does affect all of us, even in the great state of Tennessee, even in rural Middle Tennessee. So this is an issue that all of us should care about. So that being said, I have two guests on today to help me tackle this conversation. So the first one is Olivia Lupia. She is with Tennessee Conservative News. So Olivia, feel free to go ahead and give yourself a quick introduction to the audience for those who do not yet know who you are.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, everybody. I am Olivia Lupia with the Tennessee Conservative. Yes, we are the state's largest conservative media news outlet. So we are what's combating that mainstream misinformation that you get on a daily basis. We do it, obviously, from most importantly, the truth perspective, but also giving you the application for how you can get involved and how we as conservatives can stand our ground, which is very important and a big deal. So we do news and give you some practical application, which is really exciting and really fun. So I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining, Olivia. Really appreciate it. And then we're also joined by Mark Krikorian, who, of course, has been working the immigration front for a long time. So, Mark, go ahead and introduce yourself as well.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I run the Center for Immigration Studies. We're a think tank that we've celebrated our 40th anniversary last year, and we deal with the immigration issue on a national basis, but we also do follow state trends because, as you said, every state is a border state. Every town is a border town now. And we've actually, been to Tennessee a number of times, had events there, and it's an important state because it's one of the places people are moving to. Obviously, every state gets people moving there, but Tennessee really has been attracting folks. I mean, the Daily Wire moved there, all kinds of other people are moving there. So what happens in Tennessee matters, obviously, to the people there, but it does actually matter more than, and I don't want to be impolite to Kentucky or other states, but it probably does matter more than what happens in a lot of other states. So it's very important. I'll get my plug in now. We're online at cis.org. And if you like snark and sarcasm, I'm on Twitter. It's spelled X, but it's still pronounced Twitter at Mark S as in Stephen, Mark S. Krikorian.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Mark. Really glad to have you on. So, Olivia, I know you have sent me over a list of some of the bills that are currently being worked on by the state legislature. So we'll kind of just start going through some of these here and talk through kind of where they're at as far as the likelihood that these bills will pass, where they're actually at in the legislative process, and some of the opposition that we're seeing with some of these bills. So we'll go ahead and just dive straight into it. At the top here, we have SB 1486. So roughly that, my understanding is that's going to require law enforcement to hold on to illegals longer in order to allow the feds to take custody. But feel free to give us any further details on this bill and break down kind of the status of the opposition.
Absolutely. So this first bill, I believe, is coming from Senator Brent Taylor, who is down in Memphis. And what's great about Senator Taylor is he's all in. Make Memphis Matter is his literal tagline, and he does that every day. So first of all, shout out to Senator Taylor. But this is also born because there's a real problem with judicial accountability. And I think we're seeing that obviously nationwide, but particularly in Memphis with the Memphis Safe Task Force. So he's really trying to bring things that not only will help with the legal immigration front, but also really start to bring that judicial accountability. So basically, what this bill says is technically already law enforcement here, particularly counties entered into the 287G program, which is a federal program where they can work with ICE. Memphis, Shelby County has not done that yet, but in general, they're already supposed to hold people for a certain amount of time when ICE files a detainer request. So when they arrest someone, if the immigration status is, unknown or whatever, they're supposed to contact the federal authorities. If ICE wants to deal with them or come pick them up, they'll say, "Hey, yes, we like them," and the local law enforcement is supposed to hold on to them. What is happening is that they, under the guise of it costs too much and all this other nonsense, they're just letting them go before ICE can actually come pick them up. So they're saying, well, okay, he got arraigned and he's out on bail, whatever, in less than 24 hours. So we're not going to hold him any extra time and to give ICE enough time to come get here. So basically, I think this bill said they have to hold him for 48 hours if a detainer request is made. So if they contact ICE or the federal authorities, DHS says, yes, we absolutely have an interest in this person, it would require the local agency to hold that detainee for up to 48 hours after the time they'd normally be released. So it's just a way to give a little bit of cushion to the federal authorities so these people aren't just cycling in and out of the jail. So it'll be interesting to see on that one how much pushback comes back, just from the sense that they say, oh, well, it costs, X amount of dollars per day to keep an inmate in the county jail and this and that. And Memphis has so many money problems, it's not even funny. But the idea is to put some accountability and actually give our federal authorities time to come and do their job. So I think it's a great bill in theory. It's been assigned to the Senate Judiciary Committee, which that is a hit or miss committee. So that'll be interesting to see. I don't think it has a hearing date yet, but illegal immigration is definitely set to be a cornerstone of the legislative session this year, especially after Cameron Sexton and Jack Johnson and McNally all made the announcement that they've been working with Stephen Miller on an immigration slate. So I don't know if this bill is part of that, but it's definitely all going to be featured this year. So it'll be very interesting to see how that one goes down.
Yeah, I've given Sexton and others in leadership a bad time over the years. But at the end of the day, if they're working with Stephen Miller and they're going to make some real positive impact, I will give them full credit, credit where credit is due. At the end of the day, I don't care who gets the credit. I don't need the credit. If Cameron Sexton wants all the credit, I will sing his praises if he can pass some legitimate stopgaps to this illegal immigration crisis here. So, absolutely. Mark, you kind of heard a rundown of SB 1486. What's your take on it?
This is something that, frankly, should go without saying in some sense, because the 48-hour time period to hold somebody after the local jail would otherwise release them is actually in federal law. In other words, Congress has authorized the local and state police to hold people for up to 48 hours for ICE to come and get them. And so this is really just would be requiring local jurisdictions in the state to do what Congress has already authorized them to do. It's kind of it's important. I would actually suggest that a mandating participation in the 287G program is probably even more important, in the sense that then you would have local police, you'd have like a trained person in immigration law in each jurisdiction, and they would kind of start the deportation process for ICE and get the ball rolling. But short of that, this clearly, as long as if it's enforced, this clearly would be an improvement, and would make the communities that aren't already doing this, I think, significantly safer.
Definitely.
Yeah. So just to clarify, because I'm a novice in this is why I have you both on. The 287G program, did I get that right?
Yeah. And what it does, the 287G program is something that local jurisdictions can sign up for. and they would send one, usually it's one person becomes the immigration guy, and he actually gets immigration law training from DHS and then goes back, and he can kind of, they're not walking around asking people for green cards. The point is, when the local police arrest somebody for drunk driving or beating his wife or selling drugs or whatever it is, their fingerprints are already scanned now and go automatically both to the FBI and to DHS. So it's not really a question of the locals trying to decide what somebody's immigration status is. ICE knows that. But the point is, the immigration guy, as it were, who was kind of deputized to serve as an immigration officer, would be able to start the process of deportation and kind of be sort of leverage ICE as be a force multiplier for ICE. So it's an important thing. Florida, for instance, requires all law enforcement in the state, every law enforcement agency, to be in the 287G program. Under Biden, they actually booted a bunch of people out and didn't sign up new jurisdictions. Under Trump, hundreds of new jurisdictions have been signed up.
Yeah, I think in Tennessee we have I think at least 30 counties, if not more, signed up here. I think we might be actually closer to 40 now.
We
maybe?
have
I'm not
40 is what I see.
40. Yeah.
I did a quick search on that because I knew that there was a couple. Thank you for breaking down the program. I knew of the program, but I knew that there was a couple. I want to say Putnam County was one of the first ones that jumped straight in with Sheriff Eddie Ferris. But it looks like we're right around 40. So I mean, we're doing well, but we still got quite a few counties to go.
And just if I can insert here, it's often sheriff's departments often are more likely to be signing up than city police departments, because sheriffs are elected. So they actually kind of reflect their voters' concerns. Police chiefs are appointed by, it changes differently. It's different in different states, but they're appointed by the mayor or the city council or whatever. And so they're actually, there are plenty of cities that participate, but not as many. And that's where a legal mandate from the legislature might actually make a difference, because unlike the federal state relationship, where the feds can't just tell the states to do things because they didn't create the states created the federal government. But for local governments, counties and cities and towns, the state legislature created all of them. And so they can require anything the legislature wants to require them to do. And so requiring them to participate in 287G is something that would get cities that otherwise might not bother, but also are probably more likely to have illegal aliens in them, participate in the program.
Yeah, so it sounds like that's some legislation that's very practical. I believe, to Olivia's point earlier, that that Sexton has not announced all the bills he's planning on bringing forward. So, Cameron Sexton, anyone else in the legislature, if you're listening to this this podcast, let's seriously consider the 287G program. But we'll go ahead and move on to some of the other bills being proposed. So that Senate bill looks like it doesn't have a House bill equivalent, but we do have the next one is HB 0793, and the Senate equivalent is SB 0836, which allows the disenrollment of illegal students. So, Olivia, tell us about that one. I know it's a hot button one.
Yes, and it's interesting to me that of all the immigration things, this is the one that has become the linchpin, particularly for, I think, liberal and Democrat opposition. Now, I will preface that with saying this is the first, I think, real kind of toothy immigration bill that our legislature has actually expressed interest in or actually tried to get passed in a very long time. So that's part of the reason it was such a hubbub, despite voters asking for this for forever. Some of us have been on the know for a while that illegal immigration has been a problem in Tennessee for a long time. It's not just recently. But this bill basically says that a school, any public school or LEA or anything that falls under state control, would be required to check a student's citizenship when they're enrolling. And if it's discovered that that child is illegal, not here, not in resident alien, whatever, illegal, not supposed to be here, the school would then have the choice to disenroll that student if the family does not pay what would be the equivalent of out of county tuition. So it sounds great on paper, kinda, but I will also say there was a much stronger bill that was killed last year by the rhinos, Republicans in name only, for those of you who don't know that acronym, that actually would have mandated that they be disenrolled. It didn't even give the tuition option. It just said if they're found out to be illegal, they have to be disenrolled. So Rhino leadership really put a lot of pressure on that one. That one was run, I think, by Senator Janice Bowling, who we love, but they killed that bill in favor of this bill, which is being run by William Lamberth and Jack Johnson. Now, this bill made it through the Senate last year. It made it through protests in the gallery. It got news coverage, all that kind of stuff. And let me also just preface with the blanket, all of these immigration bills that we're talking about tonight are going to face massive pushback from Democrats just because they have to do with legal immigration. So you have to put that aside when we really are talking about opposition to these bills. Unfortunately, a lot of times we're really talking about Republican opposition to these bills. So that's a very different beast, actually, when we get into how these bills get passed and things like that. So anyway, this bill actually passed through the Senate last year. It stalled in the House because there rose some questions that Leader Lamberth could not get satisfactory answers to from the federal Department of Education that potentially put some federal funding at risk for Tennessee. So it stalled. It's not dead. Lamberth hinted that he's going to bring it back this year. It's kind of been floating around speculating. So we're not 100% sure where that one stands right now. I have a feeling there's a good chance it'll be brought back just because it was such a attention getter and a headline getter, and it's an election year, so we all know that our representatives like to make the most of that situation. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes. It's like a good idea in theory. I think it's one of those things that kind of should make you say duh, kind of like the last one we were talking about. That should just be common practice, but unfortunately it's very controversial, and it doesn't have the teeth that I think it needs to have into it because, like I said, disenrollment is optional and they have the tuition. So here we have an ability to make money. And so it's okay if you're illegal as long as the state's making money from it, is kind of how it comes off to me.
Yeah. So, Mark, when I hear that, I'm immediately thinking, why are we even giving them the choice? You know, when I'm thinking, okay, what's Mark going to say to strengthen this bill? That's where my mind goes. Why give the choice? I think it should just be mandated. But what are your thoughts?
Two things. First, the Supreme Court ruled in 1982 that local jurisdictions aren't allowed to exclude illegal alien kids. It was left murky as to whether Congress could do it because they said Congress hasn't authorized the locals to do that, and so they can't. So that isn't an argument against the bill. It just means that you need to know going in that this would be what you're doing is creating a lawsuit, and the point would be to pursue it up to the Supreme Court and see if there's a different decision, or frankly, if this issue of paying out of district tuition would be covered by the 1982 decision or not. I don't think Supreme Court has ruled on that. Some people have talked about that and it's never gotten up to them. So that's the first thing, is that a bill like this, even if it passes, and I'm not against it, I think it's probably a useful thing, but you need to understand that it's an exercise to create a lawsuit to try to change policy at the federal level, either through the Supreme Court or to get Congress to change its policy. The second thing I'd say is that most kids in families headed by illegal immigrants are U.S. born. They're U.S. citizens, something like 80% or more. In other words, the number of illegal alien kids, it's a real thing, but the number, it's not that big. And that's not an argument against this, but to me, it raises the question of there's a lot of other things that might be a lot more effective in reducing illegal immigration. And this is the kind of thing that gets headlines, gets opposition from the kind of kooky left, but there's only so many hours in a legislative session and only so much political capital you can pursue. And this is just me talking, but if I were a state legislator, there's probably other things I would prioritize, unless the strategy here is to create the lawsuit and pursue it. But if that's the case, then the Tennessee Attorney General or whoever would pursue this needs to be part of the discussion and have a strategy about how they're going to proceed. See what I mean?
And I will jump back in there and say, yes, that's a very good point. And I believe that Lamberth's intention is, in fact, to challenge that Plyler versus Doe, which is that Supreme Court ruling. So that was discussed. I don't know how involved the Attorney General's office has been, which I do think is a challenge, because if he's going to be the one who has to fight this one all the way up, that needs to be important. So yes, that I believe was at least part of the intention. So again, this is an interesting, it's kind of a mess, really. It's the best way I could say it. And it's been interesting to watch it through. So I'm not 100% sure what they're going to do with it. I agree that it's a good thing to maybe challenge that ruling, because that's nonsense. But again, are there more important things that we can do right now that have actual consequences day to day, that demagnetize this state and shut off the tap for illegal aliens here? I think that's the balance, just like Mark was saying, that I hope our legislators are considering.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about another, should be obvious one, but SB 1464, the anti-doxing bill. So tell us more about that, Olivia.
Yes. So this was born, I don't know if you guys, heard about this or remember, but over the summer, the Tennessee Highway Patrol, THP, and ICE/DHS/ a couple other agencies kind of did a joint operation where THP was doing massive traffic stops, and then they had immigration on hand who were then kind of on the side running things, and then they could make those immigration arrests based off of that. So of course Nashville flipped out. Mayor Freddie O'Connor got involved. He issued an executive order that was extremely controversial that basically said local law enforcement, even all first responders, including firefighters, everything down, cannot work with ICE. They published this website link that was supposed to be not tracking the movement per se, but also tracking what was going on without giving anything away. Long story short, that ended up in the doxing of a couple of federal agents, because all of this information was supposed to be shared publicly and available for the public to get into, and it was posted on public databases and this and that. And it did jeopardize a couple of, I think they were HSI agents, they weren't ICE, but they were involved in all of that. So this bill is in response to that, which basically says, again, it's kind of common sense. You can't be doxing federal immigration people. So it protects anyone federal, I believe all the way down to local, who are involved in any kind of immigration enforcement operation. Their names can't be published. I mean, beyond, basic like last names or whatever is required by law. You can't post their addresses, and you can't post information or make public information about certain strategies, certain locations, certain operations, tactics, those kinds of things. So it's just, again, preserving basic information that keeps these people safe. It's not a political, I don't even really consider this a political bill. Unfortunately, the left has turned it into a political issue because they do that with everything. But this is really just to keep these immigration officials safe. It's not a really revolutionary bill or anything that's really life-changing or, oh my gosh, this is massive for illegal immigration. But it is important, because if you're watching anything at all that's going on in Minneapolis right now, and that's just the latest example of what's going on with immigration stuff. And again, just because Tennessee isn't in the news all the time with that stuff, our legal immigration problem is huge. And having federal officials doxxed is a huge problem. That's not okay under any circumstances. So it's a good bill. I don't see any reason it shouldn't pass with Republican support. I just don't see why even rhinos would push back on it, because it's just about keeping basic operational information, private, which is fine, or classified, which is how it should be. So yeah.
And unfortunately, we need it. At the time of this recording, this episode will air a couple days after we record, but there's a whole bunch of issues going on right now in Minnesota that's taking up all the headlines, but specifically there's been a signal chat that has been uncovered that may implicate a bunch of state officials that were involved in essentially tracking all the whereabouts of ICE and sending out protesters to go and impede ICE operations. So unfortunately, we see basically what happened in Tennessee at a much larger, more drastic scale happening in Minnesota. So this is again one of those things where it's common sense, but common sense is not so common anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is an important thing. Frankly, it should be at the federal level too, but the state legislature can't pass federal laws. They can deal with state laws. And this is absurd. And, you have these anti-enforcement people complaining about ICE agents wearing masks. And yet the reason they're wearing masks is because these very same anti-border radicals are implicitly threatening their own families. That's what doxing is about. It's this is where this person lives. Here's his phone number. Here's where his kids go to school. That's that's criminal behavior, and absolutely should not be allowed. And the point of this doxing isn't just to intimidate ICE agents. It is that. It's to scare them. That's the point, and intimidate them. But it's also to kind of create the impression that somehow, that these are, stormtroopers, what have you, the usual nonsensical terms that the left uses. And, it can't be allowed. So, yeah, more power to the people pushing this kind of legislation.
Yeah. I'm going to take the next three as kind of a triple shot here because all of them have a lot of overlap. I'm sure that as the legislative process goes on, I could see some of these getting refined and possibly wrapped into maybe one more extensive bill here. So HB 1706 essentially prohibits illegal aliens from operating a commercial motor vehicle in the state and requires the law enforcement agency that arrests such illegal to notify federal immigration authorities. SB 1748 keeps drivers with a commercial license off the road if unable to read and speak the English language. HB 1708 requires individuals applying for a driver's license to speak and read proficient English. So again, there's all that has to do with essentially licenses and motor vehicles. So I know I'm taking it as a triple shot, Olivia, but anything about any of those three that you want to tell us about as far as where they stand in the legislature?
Yes. No, I'm so glad. Great minds think alike, because that's exactly it. This is kind of one major topic. I'm not sure if any of them will get rewritten or kind of make some amendments here and there to kind of make this one thing. I think they could. The challenges when you get with that is when you get the opposition in and they start needling the little things. It's kind of a catch-22. Do you pass kind of an omnibus kind of thing, or do you do it as single issues and really hash it out? So at least if you can't get one part passed, at least you get some other parts passed. So I'm not sure. As of right now, they all stand as independent bills. But yeah, basically, again, things that you think are already common sense that are now, it's kind of like, why isn't this in the law already? Or why isn't this the presumption of the law that illegal aliens can't do these things? I think if anyone's been paying attention to the national news circuit, especially over the last few months, we've all heard, and Connor, you actually brought it up right at the beginning, people are being killed by illegal aliens on the road because they cannot read and write English. That's a fact. That's not a political statement. That's not a conservative or a Democrat issue. That is a fact. If you cannot read the language in the country in which you are driving, you are going to have issues. It's a problem. So one of the bills, basically the one that takes the CDLs off the road, if they do a stop and the officers think that they are illegal, they can do the check if they are, or if they basically have the permission, it would grant permission for them to check their English right on the spot. So if they can't meet those requirements, they get pulled out. The truck has to go out of commission. And I believe, I don't have it pulled up in front of me, but if I remember correctly, this bill, which I love, actually also puts a consequence on the employer. So I believe there's a fine and a misdemeanor involved for the employer of the company who hired illegal aliens. And that is key. There are so many of these immigration bills that come through and they have no teeth. That is a huge, huge problem in our legislature. I will say that hands down, unequivocally. They love to pass things that sound good theoretically, but have no teeth. I'll give you an example. It's not necessarily with illegal immigration, but our open primaries. Technically, legally, Tennessee has closed primaries. It is illegal to vote for a party to which you are not, quote unquote, a member. there's no enforcement mechanism. So we basically have closed primaries on the books, open primaries in reality. That is the situation with a lot of these illegal immigration bills. So I do love the ones that put some actual consequences in, because again, you can take the illegal off the street, but if he can turn around and hire another one out of the Home Depot parking lot tomorrow, it doesn't matter. So that's huge. The English in the driver's license test, there was a very strong bill that would have mandated that only English for driver's tests be the standard, period. That was killed last year in committee by the rhinos. A lot of them because they're corporate donors, like where there's a Volkswagen and a BMW, here, so they send their people from Germany. Oh, well, they can't speak English. Are you kidding me? Get out of here. So, so hopefully, because illegal immigration is a hot button this year, and because the legislature seems willing to do what their voters have been asking them to do for quite a few years, hopefully we will see some traction on all of that. I'm a little bit more optimistic, particularly because I believe 2 of those are being run by Republican leadership. So there's a much higher chance that they'll get passed than, say, some conservative who just crazily enough wants to make good policy. So I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic about those, which is a nice thing to say for once.
Yeah, it's all those German immigrants that we keep getting.
Yeah,
That's that's where the real problem lies.
Yeah.
You mentioned the CDLs, and I think it's important. And Mark, feel free to fact check me on this or add anything additional. But I believe the state of New York, it was recently revealed, gave about, I think it was 51% of their CDLs were given out to illegal immigrants. And then, of course, when we're seeing these stories of individuals being killed by these CDL drivers that can't speak English or are here illegal or both, it's happening in other states. There was a really viral one quite a while back now at this point that was in Florida, where this driver essentially did an illegal U-turn and caused like a 20-car pileup and murdered, well, I should say, individuals died in the crash. I want to be a little more technical here, but it was caused by this driver who did not know what he was doing. Because he did not know the rules of the road, and so this is huge, and of course it's happening in California. And again, I brought up at the beginning an example that happened right here in Middle Tennessee, because every state is a border state, and we need to constantly keep reminding people of that, because it could be your loved one, God forbid, that is caught in one of these horrible accidents that's caused by someone who has no right being behind the wheel of a giant truck. So, Mark, feel free to add in, as far as that is concerned with these blue states giving out those licenses. And then, of course, you've dealt with this type of policy before. So when it comes to specifically motor vehicles, licenses, and things of that nature, what have you seen that's effective?
The driver's license issue is one of the most important issues in controlling illegal immigration, because we don't have a national ID card. Our national ID system is based on the state driver's licenses, and so it really matters. I'm talking about just regular driver's license, not even the commercial ones for trucks. Tennessee actually used to give driver's licenses to illegal aliens. They don't anymore, because basically all kinds of smugglers and illegals flocked there to get Tennessee driver's licenses. So they ended that, which was good to see. The trucker issue is interesting, because a lot of the people who are involved here are illegal, but some of them aren't. Some of them are here on visas. The trucking companies, the employers, are trying to import cheap labor as though driving a truck is a job Americans won't do, which is ridiculous. And the thing is that the feds regulate these commercial driver's licenses, but the states give them out. So one of the problems you had, I actually, on our own podcast, I had a American trucker who's written about this a lot. He said in California, there are private driving schools teach you how to drive a truck, and nobody oversees whether they're teaching properly. And if you get a certificate from one of these schools, the state just gives you the driver's license. Nobody from the State Department of Motor Vehicles sits in a truck with you and has you go through and, drive your truck to show you can, which doesn't happen if you're getting a regular driver's license. When I got my first driver's license, in fact, I failed the first time, but there was a guy from the Massachusetts Registry of Motor Vehicles there in the car with me. In California, they're not doing that. It's insane. So absolutely cracking down on this kind of thing is essential. Some states, obviously Florida, but also Indiana and Oklahoma are, cracking down basically at the weigh stations where you enter the state, and you have to weigh the truck because it can't be over a certain weight because it harms, damage the highways. They also often have ICE guys there with the state people. And if you can't, if you don't know a stop sign from a yield sign or whatever it is, they can just yank your license right there. But Olivia's point that the employers also need to be held responsible is essential, because, they can always find another illegal alien, but the employers need to be paying a price. So absolutely, this is a good idea.
Yeah, well, let's hope we can get some ground on this, because that's such a major issue. So we'll move on to the next one then. So we got HB 1704, which creates a Class A misdemeanor for anyone with a final deportation order who enters the state. So Olivia, I'll turn it over to you to tell us more.
Sure. So this one, it's good, right? I'm never going to say that something demagnetizing or something that is cracking down on illegal immigration is, bad. It's just a blanket word. My challenge is charging people with state crimes. Like, the point is to get them out. So you can't charge them with a federal crime, obviously, because it's the state. So you're charging like a state misdemeanor. So what? They can sit in the jail and the taxpayer has to pay for them some more. If they already have a final deportation order, the job is to turn them over to the feds and get them out of the country. That, again, we can go back to Senator Taylor's legislation that says you have to hold them for, the extra 48 hours so ICE can come pick them up. That should be the end game. So I personally, this is just Olivia's opinion, think this is a little bit one of those great headliners, but kind of nothing burgers. Ultimately, that serve no purpose. Again, why are we adding state crimes to put the burden on our state? Then they have to go through our court system. Then they clog up the court system for people, who need or are waiting for actual due process. I am not a believer in due process for illegals. If you came here illegally, you broke due process. There is no due process for you. You're not a citizen. You're not entitled to our due process. That's a bigger issue, obviously. I can't fix that issue, and neither will this bill. But if you're coming at it from that perspective, is the point is to get them out of the country, or really, quite honestly, get them out of my state. If they want to go to Minneapolis, that's, Minnesota's problem. But how is this helpful? So I don't know, maybe Mark has some different insights on that one. But to me, this one just seems kind of like, okay, great headliner. We're slapping crimes on for illegal immigration, illegal immigrants. And hopefully that makes them not want to come here. They're already on the state, teat, for lack of a better term anyway. A lot of them getting benefits, a lot of them doing this. Oh, they don't want to come here because they might get a misdemeanor. Well, Jose Felipe, down in Nashville, there's not a single day that we don't write an article about illegal immigrants getting arrested. And most of them, it's not their first charge. They've already been in and out of our, court system, in and out of the jail system. So what's more, Class A misdemeanor, honestly. So I don't know.
I'm actually more positive about this kind of idea, because the point is not to arrest somebody with a final order of removal. Basically, they're fugitives. In other words, they've been ordered removed, ordered deported, but they just ignored it. The point is not to sit them in jail for 30 days. The point is to create a state crime for which they can be arrested, because most illegal aliens aren't raping children or anything. They're just regular working stiffs. But there's like 1 million people, illegal immigrants in the whole country, who have final deportation orders. They've gotten they got due process coming out their ears, and they've been ordered deported. This would enable local cops to arrest them for a state crime. And then when their fingerprints are scanned and they go to ICE, ICE says, oh, this guy has a final order of removal. And if the local DA doesn't want to prosecute, because like Olivia says, why bother? Then they just hand them over to ICE. In other words, it seems to me the potential benefit is you don't have to wait for them to drive drunk or sell drugs or beat up their girlfriends. You can just arrest them for having a final deportation, being a fugitive from a deportation order, making that a state crime. State authorities can arrest the person, then hand them over to ICE and get them out of the country. So I think, it's not going to solve everything, but I think it's one more tool in the toolkit that local law enforcement can use to help the feds enforce immigration laws.
That's a really good point. That's an excellent point. Yeah. That's true.
Yep.
Oh, yay. Now I get to be more optimistic about things. I like when that happens.
I love it. Yeah. So, I mean, it seems to me like that may be one of the best ones that we've gone over so far. So that's encouraging. Um, so let's go ahead and go over one last bill, and then we'll spend a moment as we wrap up here to just talk about, like I said, Cameron Sexton is talking as if there's more legislation that's yet to be announced. So I'm going to give you both the opportunity to speak as if you are advising Speaker Sexton on what we're missing that we've not gone over. But first, let's go ahead and just do this last one real quick here. So HB 1711 requires reporting of costs to state of illegal immigration and other various information. So that's been assigned to the House subcommittee. So my understanding here is that this is just going to honestly be a useful tool, if nothing else, just for the narrative of illegal immigration. If we can actually constantly show the taxpayer this is how much illegals in the state of Tennessee is costing you personally, I think that can be a really effective tool. But Olivia, do I have that at all right?
Yeah, there's really not much more to say on that one. That's basically what it is. Exactly what you said. It's just an effective tool so that people can see an actual, black and white, actually really in the red because it puts us in the red. But what is the cost of illegal immigration to Tennessee? And I believe it requires, it's like I don't know if the Department of Education was in there, but like the Department of Finance, the health department, all those kind of things that would kind of be overseeing benefits and those kinds of things. So it requires them to report to the legislature, to the governor, and also to the centralized immigration office that Tennessee created in their omnibus do nothing immigration bill last year. So they passed something that said, "Ooh, look at all these immigration bills we did that really didn't do anything." But it will be helpful because if people can see that there's an actual dollar cost associated, when we can say, it costs us, $500,000 per illegal alien. I don't know if it's that much. I doubt it. But the point is it becomes real. So I think it's a good way. I think it's also an accountability and transparency mechanism as well, because you can say a lot of things, but numbers theoretically don't lie when you've got people who are honest. And actually doing those numbers. So it's not I don't think it's an imperative bill to pass through. It's not like, oh my gosh, this will change everything. But I'm always about accountability, transparency, and being able to have those black and white, cold hard cash, literally facts of this is what immigration is costing our state. Not even morally, but literally with greenbacks. This is what it costs you, the taxpayer of Tennessee, to have this ongoing cancer is really what it is.
Yeah. I mean, this is a great idea. Transparency is obviously always good. It's important, though, the details matter here. Mm-hmm. If you're not including school costs, then you're leaving a big hole in it. And so the first thing is they're all going to have to ask whatever agency is involved, whether it's a hospital, a school, they're all going to have to ask legal status. And that's something that, they're going to resist and people will sue and all that sort of thing. But the other thing to keep in mind here is that a kid who's born in the United States, an American kid, a minor living in with illegal alien parents, is a cost of illegal immigration. Mm-hmm. Whereas if they're just reporting that which students are illegal or which people come to the emergency room who are themselves illegal aliens and nothing else, then that's minimizing the actual cost. You need to capture the real cost. Mm-hmm. And so my point is the wording both of the legislation, if it were to pass, and then how it's implemented really matters here. Because you could end up with a lowball number if you're not actually looking at the whole universe of costs. And then you have the other side saying, look, that's not so bad. And so anyway, it's a good idea, but the details matter.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Well, let's go ahead and do our final round where we are playing advisor to the legislature. So we don't know if all of the legislation has been finalized and is just waiting to be announced. But let's just hope that maybe we have a chance to make to move the needle in this conversation here. So, Olivia, have you had a chance to speak with the Tennessee legislature to talk about things that need to be implemented in this legislative session that have yet to be announced? What are you telling them to implement?
I would definitely introduce things that bring consequences to employers of illegal immigration. I think that's one of the biggest challenges we have. We went through how many bills tonight, and there's one of them that has consequences for employers. I know a lot of it is focused on the law enforcement aspect and empowering law enforcement to be able to do their jobs, which I agree with completely. But there also has to be, again, it's all well and good if we get them out, but they turn around and come right back because they can receive benefits, because they can get hired again, because they can do all of that. There is a bill that we didn't mention earlier, but it will require citizenship checks to receive state benefits. But I think, like Mark mentioned, that's probably one of those ones they're going to threaten to sue and all that stuff. So those kinds of things are good, but again, there have to be consequences to anything. So I couldn't necessarily say one bill in particular, or here's exactly what I would change or implement, but definitely an overall theme of if there aren't consequences to employers, and not a little, oh, here's a $500 fine and, we write you a strongly worded letter, none of that. There have to be actual reasons about why Tennessee is not a welcoming place for illegal immigrants and for those who would hire them. So that would be my biggest ask, is for any of them to say, please write in the toughest consequence you can think of that we could legally get away with. And then if they have to barter down a little bit from there, go from there. But there's a theme where they start at like the lowest possible metric for, well, we can say, it's illegal, and we can say that there's a consequence if the attorney general chooses to go after it, if the legislature feels like they want to have a committee hearing, blah, blah, blah. So that, Cameron Sexton, if you are listening, please, 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 measures with teeth.
Awesome.
Yeah, I would actually, along the same lines as Olivia's suggestion, is focusing on employment.
Mm-hmm.
But specifically, what I would do, Tennessee has a partial E-Verify mandate. I don't know the exact extent of it, but E-Verify is this online free system, so that when you're as an employer, you take somebody's payroll information and file it with Social Security and IRS. You also check a website as to whether it's real information. Does the name match the Social Security number? Is it a real Social Security number? Does it match the age of the person who has that number? So an E-Verify mandate is something for all employers, private and public, is essential. Like I said, Tennessee has a partial mandate, but I forget what the extent of it is. But you got to add to that there needs to be a dedicated funding stream for auditing employers and making sure that they're actually complying. And I don't know if other states have looked into this, because I'm not sure what the implications are, but there are other systems. There's something called the Social Security Number Verification System, SSNVS, that I think a state could mandate employers to participate in. And a state could mandate that if an employer got what is called a no match letter from the Social Security Administration, that the payroll information they sent in doesn't match Social Security's own files, require them to follow up on that and figure out, is this person legit? Or, it could just be a paperwork error, but if not, what's the story? So again, focusing on employers, because if it becomes hard to find and keep a job as an illegal alien, illegal aliens aren't going to be moving to Tennessee, and the ones that are there are going to be more likely to leave. Turning the magnet of jobs off is the way you actually get numbers of people to leave. Whereas the law enforcement specific arresting criminal stuff is important, but most illegal aliens aren't, child rapists. They're just ordinary working stiffs breaking the law as part of their employment. You need to make that employment basically as difficult as possible to demagnetize the job market and demagnetize Tennessee for illegal aliens.
Yeah, what he said.
Well, thank you both. I think this has been a really great episode. I think there's been a lot of great information here. I think we've definitely made it worth the listeners' time to dive into these issues. I really appreciate you both coming on. I know we could keep going and going, but we'll wrap it up here for now, and maybe we'll have a part 2 if a lot happens in the legislature this year. But first of all, we'll go ahead and go around the horn. And Olivia, where can people go to follow you and keep up with everything that you're doing?
Absolutely. Definitely find us at TennesseeConservativeNews.com. All of our articles, all of our videos are always published there. You can sign up for our free daily e-newsletter right in your inbox. Couldn't be simpler. You can have it done by the time I'm finished with my pitch, I bet. So TennesseeConservativeNews.com. You can follow us on all the social media. To follow me personally, I'm on Facebook as Olivia Lupia. I'm also on X, pronounced Twitter, at Liv, Liv, for Liberty. So yes, a little bit of sass and personal fun on that page. So come on over. It's always fun. We'll put it that way.
Fantastic. And some of my writing occasionally shows up in Tennessee Conservative News as well. I need to
Yes, it
I need to
does.
submit some more stuff. It's been a little while, but
Come on, Connor.
but we'll get on that. All right. Well, Mark, where can people go to keep up with you?
The Center for Immigration Studies is online at cis.org. I registered that when you had to look up things in the phone book in the white pages. That's why I got such a nice, short, easy URL, cis.org. And we're on, CIS is on all the usual social media things. I forget what our handle is. You can look it up if you want, Facebook and the rest of it. But on Twitter, my handle is Mark S, as in Stephen, Mark S. Krikorian. And I obviously tweet on immigration stuff, but also on other things, as Olivia suggested as well. That's what Twitter's good for. So
awesome. Well, thank you both again. And thank you, listeners. Really appreciate you tuning in. Hopefully you got your money's worth. It is free, so you should have. But really appreciate you joining us, and we'll see you next time.